Om Shanti. Today we're going to do the power of accommodation. There are 3 of us here, so together we'll hopefully try to open the subject up. Power of accommodation, or the power to adjust, basically means making yourself vaster, bigger than the problems that come in front, so that no problem feels bigger than yourself, so that you're not actually feeling small to any situation, circumstance that comes along, or of course the situations and circumstances that are already in situ. For example, the people that you live with, the things that are happening in the world, without any new things happening, whether you feel like the walls of your cave are closing in, or whether you're actually developing the ocean-like qualities that make the cave feel like a vast mansion, into a city, into a country, into a world, into outer space, and before you know it, you've got yourself who's created so much space between yourself and the external that you're no longer feeling like it's suffocating you. So you're not actually in fear of anything that's going on because of the knowledge that you're learning. So when the knowledge is utilised, if it's not utilised, then it wouldn't actually have any kind of effect, because it's only knowledge for knowledge's sake then. But if it makes me think that something is very important, then what gets imported in something that's important is very often people's emotions, and so they tend to rely on luck and whether the day goes well for them, which is what people's favourite saying is, isn't it? Did you have a good day? Oh, I hope you have a good day. Good afternoon, good morning. And then a person will respond accordingly, normally, to whether they accommodated their day. And if they didn't, they say, well, it was good until... Yeah, and sometimes they have that slogan, don't they, or fridge magnet, it was a good day until, it'll be a good day until some comes and spoils it. So this is proof that man believes totally, 100%, that the external is, he's dependent on the external to provide the internal state of peace, rather than the other way round, whereby our state of peace is actually making us feel peaceful and accommodating that which is peaceless, that which is angry, that which normally provides nervous tension, job interviews, things that are suddenly, things that happen out of the blue that we're not prepared for. There's a problem with that because you haven't got this reliable structure when you're relying on the outside world, because that's why they say that change creates a lot of stress. They mention marriages create stress, and they also mention change and moving creates stress, because they're all the unknown factors, and people have fear of the unknown. Whereas if yourself, who's accommodating everything, is well known, that has the practice of making big things smaller than they are, rather than more important, less important, but you're still dealing with everything without, when people say, I can't deal with this at the moment, I'm trying to deal with this, and I can't, it means that that's major importance, and that's pulling the strings to their emotions, so they're like a fish on the line. So they're not really pulling the strings, they're having their strings pulled by the situations and circumstances. So then all of a sudden they become intolerant because they lack the power of accommodation. They're not adjusting to what comes along, living in the moment, and whatever comes along meets that moment, whereas they're going out into the future frightening world that anything could happen, and that's actually taking all the energy. So when people have this belief system that it's outside that has to accommodate me, then I'm at its mercy, rather than me remaining merciful to everyone who's in that state. No one's got time for anyone anymore because they're all at the beck and call of the society, the corona, the situation outside, and it's being merciless to us. So that's the downfall, really. And worry is, someone that could actually be sleeping in a worried state and losing energy while they sleep, even because it's all committed to the subconscious mind, and that's what you sleep in. That's your bed. People think they sleep in a bed, but they don't actually. They sleep in the subconscious mind because you're only aware of your bed at first, aren't you? And then you go to sleep. Never understood it really. Don't buy into it, of having a bed, because you only know when you've got a bed when you look at it when you're not in it, or when you're about to get in it, and then when you're asleep you don't know, and when you're awake you wake up with your pillows, quilt and king size, queen size bed, and that's all the appreciation it really gets. The rest of the time you're asleep in it. And you don't really sleep in that, you sleep in the world of your subconscious, your unconscious mind. So accommodation, adjusting, making yourself bigger and better than the things you have to face, because they're nothing compared to you, that sort of structure.
So we did
we're looking
power
at.
to pack up last time.
Yes.
So how this power is different?
They're connected. They're connected as you're packing up from importing the role into the soul, making the role more important. You're adjusting to it as well. Your handling power increases.
Because I was thinking when we start talking about doing this power, I straight away thought about my mother. Because even this morning I was thinking about my mother, that how much power she must have had to tolerate and to adjust everything around me and my brother and my father, no matter how much mischief we did, but she always accommodated with smile and lots of love. So do you think it's just role, whatever role we play, that affects this power? Or
Well, it's a more somber role, isn't it? I mean, the man will he's the fixer, isn't he? So he can just walk out the door, whereas the female will think of the children and think of making the home more peaceful. The man, she wants to share, he wants to fix. So we do play different roles, but soul's still genderless, but there's a heavy programming takes place from a very early age, isn't there? That you're the female, the homemaker, the one that actually brings up the children. The children will look at you first, won't they, when they first come into the world.
But like you said, they've been taught that when you get married, when you get even pregnant, you will be taught that you have to behave like this with your children, and you become mother now. So, but some mother, they don't accept. They just do it because they have to do it, because they've been told to behave like mother. But some mothers, they're completely in love with their children, isn't it?
Yeah,
their adjustment power is different than the other mothers.
Yeah, But of course you get that situation where the one mother who doesn't actually take well to motherhood. And it's the same really, in the sense of there's a negative energy involved, because the other woman who's actually very motherly will actually become very attached to the children, and she can't actually accommodate anything that's a threat
That's true.
to them. So she's got more threats in her life because of her attachment. The illness is going around. If someone was to abduct the child, whatever happens potentially, not even what happens to the child, but as a potential, whatever happens to the children happens to me. So you get one that's being quite aloof, and they're not able to accommodate the children, and ones that are accommodating in the wrong way. So either way, it's not a healthy way to go, because obviously you have to have concern that the children getting abducted and getting into cars for taking sweets off strangers. You have to but that's what happened, wasn't it? By protecting the children, which was as much protecting the mother because of her attachment to the children. In her mind, her children were always abducted, yet they spent a life never being abducted, but in her world they were being abducted. But then the child, the way it might take that is that everyone is out there trying to get me into their car, and there's danger out there, so they develop an unhealthy fear very often because of this. But you've got to tell a child, haven't you? But the way that you tell them, is that you're strong and brave, and you don't listen to any person that takes you because you're strong, not because you're a frightened child, because it's the wrong kind of structure, isn't it? The child has to feel strong about themselves. That is their say, so not the big person, the big people's say so.
So mother creates the shield, isn't it? She is the shield.
Yeah. But sometimes unnecessarily so, isn't
I'm
it?
trying to understand. So is it the power to accommodate or power to adjust? Do we need to create the shield for ourselves?
Well, whether you call it a shield, I think it's more to do with not being rigid. I mean, the greatest shield you can have is being flexible rather than being rigid about things. People have become so rigid in their ways, in their testimonies, in their ways of doing things, and you get situations where 3 or 4 people don't agree on something, and if they're all rigid, they're all inflexible, then even if one gives in because they have to give in, they feel like something inside of them has broken, been broken because their ego was connected to that, how rigid they were. So they didn't do it my way, and I know I'm right. You hear people talk like this, don't you? Know that I'm right. It wasn't like, I'm not sure, like the light way of being, where I'm not sure how it will end up. This was my idea, but ideas are only for the melting pot. They're not cast in stone. But they see them as cast in stone, don't they? That I am right about this. And you get 3, 4 people in a family that are all rigid. You've got conflict all the time. And you get one person that's flexible, and you'll find the 3 are arguing with each other, and the one sits out.
But then sometimes people say you're too accommodating. So is there a spiritual way of accommodating, in terms of accommodating your virtues and being more flexible?
Yeah. There's a nice way to say it, isn't there, Resh? Where you actually say something like, well, my role is to help, but this is that we've reached that line that I'm not going to do anything beyond, because as soon as you go beyond that line, there's a chance that they'll stop doing what they should be doing. So therefore you're actually being the hero, but actually feeling like a broken hero,
Because you don't want to disempower someone either, because
Or make them,
you're
make them lazy.
Yeah, or make them lazy because you're taking the lead in accommodating as well. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's
I
a
think
nice
people
gesture.
always take it wrong. These people take wrongly that, oh, she's very accommodative or always accommodating,
Always accommodating.
and she always adjusts. Oh, don't worry about her. She will adjust. But I think that people see that as weakness as well, isn't
Yeah,
it?
and
Most of the time, I think, isn't it?
yeah, and not just that, the way that they see that person and the way what that person's doing, because they want to get the feel-good factor for doing more of the lion's share.
That's true as well.
You know, there's a certain trip about it, isn't there, that one, whereby they want to, it's like, you know, singing, isn't it, and dancing is that person who, you know, they won't want to bring the microphone up to the singer, they'll want to be the singer if they got a good voice. And, you know, to actually be able to work in the kitchen and be able to accommodate that, not in the kind of a caste system feeling, because a lowly job is nothing to do with a lowly job, it's to do with a lowly feeling, isn't it? And if I don't have a lowly feeling, then I can make pots and pans and cleaning and cooking and a joy. But if it remains a caste-like vision, so I've got to change that formula in my mind. You know, I'm cleaning the soul. You know, I'm cooking for the world. You know, you can make it as powerful as you like, couldn't you? You can make it as vast as you like, so it becomes such an important thing. It's important that I stay me while I'm doing what I do. It's important that the two are kept separate, which is the power to back up into the power of accommodation, because you're always going to get someone that didn't like, there was too much chili in the food, there was too much sugar, there was too much salt.
So the power to accommodate isn't just about accommodating on a physical level, it's also about making changes in your mind in terms of accommodating good way of thinking.
Yes,
and
yeah.
switching your like somebody cleaning the pots and pans.
Yes.
You know, switching that thought to I'm cleaning the soul. So that's a very different way of
Well,
using the power of accommodation.
if someone understood the preordained drama that will be for the rest of my life, your life, we've got a preordained drama going on, which has a happy ending, because it ends up back in Satyog, back in Golden Age, back to its origin, and there's not at any one single point of that preordained drama that anything's bigger than you as a fortune teller. You know, what you know in advance is a preordained drama that you're able to come through cycle after cycle without any scars, without any marks, without any losses, without any fears, without anything of a negative nature winning, and all the positive things inside of you bring you through it. You all of a sudden feel, well, I'm looking forward to my day.
Even though you know the end of your story, that, like you say, you tell me, Binny, your end is good and all
Everyone's
victorious.
ends at their highest point.
But I think the fear is the failure in between, isn't it? That's the fear for.
But that's a state of mind, isn't it? Failure. I mean, if 2 or 3 people, 10 people, 50 people point at me as a failure, that's only a problem if I feel a failure, isn't it? I agree it's powerful, but I can manage it. And one of the biggest aspects of the Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, written by Sue Jeffries, I think her name was. But what she was saying that when she got cancer, she had to really process that belief system that she had created, because it was already a bestseller, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And she said, now I've got to actually apply in my life that whatever comes along, I'll handle it. And she had this mantra that I'll handle it. And she was making herself bigger than anything that comes. All of a sudden there's cancer. And she's now got to say with conviction, I'll handle it. And she doesn't even know what she might do, but I don't think she knows that it's a preordained drama that has a happy ending. And we know that, but when you see the limited film, would you ever watch a film that doesn't have a happy ending? You know that it's going to have a happy ending, otherwise it won't have many viewers, would it? So it's in the soul that they go through this story, which we call life, which is a virtual reality. It's not really reality. We're just playing a game. And we go through this life, and it does have a happy ending. And the soul remembers that it has a happy ending. And that's why it watches so many films and reads so many books. No one likes to see the hero get shot in the end. And I think, I'm not going to watch that again.
What if I don't want to be accommodating in a situation? What would you say to someone who says, that's it, this is how it's going to be?
It depends what the motives are, doesn't it? If the motive is to inspire someone, for example, that I'm not going to accommodate them because my motive is to inspire them, because to see them get lazy and to actually fall apart at the seams and potentially feel so worthless, because you get a lot of worth from what you do, don't you? There's no doubt about it. Although worth is being trained in being rather than doing, but the worth comes from thoughts, words, actions. So when you see someone you're not going to accommodate for that reason, but obviously if it's for our own ego, then we'll clash with them, because it would just be a clash of egos, that I'm right and you're wrong. If you feel that you're right because it's beneficial to someone, but the ego has its own self-protection, which is always leading to more and more sorrow, because I've got to prove myself to be right again and again and again, and then I won't accommodate something else. And it's almost like the feeling of being a shrinking man or a shrinking woman, that the more I don't accommodate people, the more I feel they're all around me, because the walls are closing in. I'm making that happen. If I accommodate you right now, even if you're in a mood, then this situation will pass and my mind will be able to accommodate greater things to come along, because I've passed. I allowed it to pass, to go past, so I passed. Whereas if I don't accommodate you, I've failed. I've passed according to my ego, but I've failed. And then someone else who's less a test than you are, the test then gets smaller, because I've got to pass the smaller test to get stronger. So see the way it works. The more tests you pass, the bigger the tests come along, like at school, isn't it?
It's all about getting it right in your mind first, though, because if I'm accommodating something or someone because it's going to make me feel guilty, then that's not a good way of accommodating them. Out of guilt.
Guilt. Why would you feel guilty though?
Just because I feel that it's forced on me, so if I don't do it,
Okay.
I just
Okay,
feel guilty.
right. You feel guilty if you don't, yeah.
Or
Yeah.
maybe you may be doing for a long time and now you don't feel like doing, and if you don't do it, then you feel guilty. Not anyone will make you feel guilty, but you feel guilty.
That too, yeah.
So would you carry on doing those tasks, or how would I deal with this?
So can you give a scenario, like not in a personal way,
If I'm cooking every day for the family, and it's just like for so many other reasons I don't want to cook anymore, but then so many different guilts will come in that, oh, if I don't cook, they have to cook, or if they can't cook or something, so many other guilts. So I will end up cooking anyway, or I will end up fighting inside that I don't want to cook, but I had to cook.
Yes.
And you don't want to resent someone as well,
Yes.
because then that's not being accommodating.
So it'd be a damned if you do, damned if you don't, really, isn't it? Then, yeah. So there must be a cure for that. The damned if you do, damned if you don't. I remember having this conversation with someone actually when it was my sister. When she would come over and because she was so helpful to her patients and her job that she did and had a family and everything, she couldn't get over as much as she wanted to see my mum, and so she felt guilty. And I said, do you feel guilty? So she said, yeah, I do. And I said, well, can't you just not? And it's a strange one. It sounds but people don't think that they think that while they sit there, as if it's a major problem to actually stop feeling guilty. And it's something that you've overcome, if not now, then at some other point along the line, you've got to actually watch these thoughts that are making you feel guilty, your thoughts, and you've got to actually watch them and not interfere with them. And I said, can't you just sit at home, because we don't feel any reason for you to feel guilty. Me, my brother, my mum doesn't know. She's not, not really of this planet at the present time. So therefore, if we don't feel it, it's only you and your own thoughts. Surely you can deal with that. And then when you know that your guilt is just your own thoughts. It doesn't really matter about anyone else, because in that situation, there's no one else involved. So it is actually just the person, but it's their belief. So you've already got part of your power back by realising that it actually doesn't matter what they think, because I'm not dealing with their thoughts, and I never was. I'm dealing with my own thoughts. So I'm only dealing with something that I've created, and now I'm recreating. So surely with that mastery, that self-mastery thing, that I created that guilt, and now I'm choosing to stop creating it. Because what happens normally is someone says, I felt so guilty when I did that, and then when someone says something, they then make a case against them. Yeah, you're always making me feel guilty, just trying to control me. And it goes into expansion. But when you actually think about yourself as the master creator of your thoughts, and those thoughts, you're not thinking those thoughts as well, those thoughts are happening to you because they're a creation that's been created. So you're not really having those thoughts because you can't stop those thoughts because they're your creation. So they have to come, but they've come to be recreated. So you're recreating the thoughts, and the feelings are in that as well, from a different way of thinking. And there's nothing wrong with you sitting there because you're making a statement with the right motives, is that it's not your turn.
What if I want to be accommodating and my friend doesn't want to be accommodating about a situation? How do we overcome that conflict?
If the situation affects both of you, do you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, well, you'd be all right because you're accommodating, and your friend would be suffering because she's not accommodating, and you're saying it's a situation that she should be accommodating but isn't. So that's really nothing to do with you, it's to do with her, isn't it? Yeah, it's not. It's only something to do with you if you're trying to change it. And if you're trying to change it, then you're not accommodating to her lack of accommodating, because it's a knock-on.
You've got to let go as well, isn't it? Because when you don't want to get into like an ego argument, that
Yes.
I'm right and I'm accommodating and you're
Yes.
wrong and you're not accommodating,
Yeah.
because you have to accommodate that person's feelings
Yeah.
into the situation as well.
And really, it's not what you say, it's what you do that shows the best example. So when you accommodate something and they're not accommodating, the echo tends to come back to them, and they are aware that you didn't react like that, and that has an effect. They proved that, didn't they, with the apes, where the apes clean their food. Scientists taught the apes to clean their food on one island, and the other island further on, a couple of miles on, the apes were cleaning their food, so they picked it up telepathically. So whatever you do with the right motive inspires other people's minds to not make the cave so enclosed, make it feel like the walls are, because as soon as they feel that the walls are closing in on them in their world, they become more like the person that's stuck underwater under a rock, and he panics, doesn't he? He goes into panic mode, and people are living in a state of panic at the moment purely because they believe that the situations can kill them.
I think that's what I was thinking. I thought while you were talking, I was in the impression that we always have lack of power when other person is involved. But I think if we get
It's a separate account, isn't it?
yes, I think if I develop the power of just a power of accommodation within myself or with myself, I think it will be very easy when other falls into my situation or comes into my situation. Like you said, that everyone is panicking.
Going into panic mode, yeah.
So if I adjust with all these thoughts with myself first, I think that will have effect
Yes.
on any other people I'm involved with. Isn't it?
Well, there's two things that go on with people's panic. Is that first they justify it, and they've got a big audience of who they can justify it, that will buy into it, that will go into it, that this situation is life or death, and it is physically, it is, but you've still got to, people's belief, make it, in every person that they meet. Every person that they walk past that isn't 2 meters or 1 meter or, the exact amount of weight, there'll be this certain panic that's going on in their mind because they live in that fear. So, the fear is their own. It hasn't got anything to do with the coronavirus. It could have to do with finances. It could have to do with the loss of a loved one. It could be anything because it's attachment to the role. Who's ever in that role, whatever's in that role, there'll be that panic to it. Just so happens at the present time, it's the coronavirus. Yesterday it was Brexit, wasn't it? Now that's all changed now. So that was one aspect of it, not to live in that state of panic. And the other main aspect of it is that when people dramatise things, that you'll never guess what. You'll never guess what happened to me, or you won't believe this. So it's kind of like an ego thing where people want it to be dramatic because they want to captivate as an audience. So it's trying to get power from people. If I've got an audience, then I get power because they're listening to me. And the way I might make them listen to me is, like a fanfare, really, isn't it? If someone's very dramatic and they come up to you, and it's a regular thing, they might even phone you and you say, and you know what's coming, but even by the tone, you'll never guess what. It might sound unbelievable, and they kind of give it an introduction, they give it the fanfare. So not to get caught up in the belief system of that, and your coolness will affect them. To stop their heat affecting you, you've got to stay cool to everything that goes on.
That was my next question, actually. Like, how do you accommodate a difficult person in your life?
Yes.
And still continue to live in harmony?
Yes.
Yeah.
You take the wind out of their soul, take the wind out of their sails, or burst their balloon. If you turn around and say to them, "Can you not be so dramatic? You're just so annoying." Instead, just listen and accommodate and like that. But try not to give advice because they're on a high at that present time, and they need your coolness. So they've met everyone else who's got a more high dramatic story to tell, doing the one-upmanship of stories. Well, that's nothing, I was brought up in a shoebox and I didn't even have a room to myself, where they actually do this one-upmanship of stories. But you're actually taking all the drama out of it. And there's a lot of people that don't enjoy that because they like a dramatic life. They like to actually, they don't like the coronavirus, but they like to actually have the latest news
Exactly.
of the coronavirus.
They want to be the
one,
giver of those
the messenger.
latest news.
Yeah, the messenger. And then
I think that's very good.
And then when
strategy.
someone gives the information first, they'll say it's not just that, but also, and they'll add a bit because they've got to get that icing on the top of the cake to win your attention.
I think we do this kind of accommodation with our loved ones.
Yes.
Automatic. I just realized, because this is what I did with my dad this afternoon.
Yes. Yeah.
He gave me the news, which my brother already told me. But when I said, "Really, Dad?" and he said, "Yes," it is.
Yeah.
And he was so happy. But I did it without even thinking. I didn't say, "Oh, Dad, I already know about this." But with people who we have conflict with, we don't do that, do we?
So I know.
I know.
You don't need to tell me.
But over the years, it hasn't actually. It loses its impact and it loses its impetus. So the soul has to become more dramatic. Because if you notice, there would have been a time when we just said, "It's not easy for me. It's difficult for me," and now it's become very difficult, incredibly difficult, unbelievably difficult. Difficult beyond your wildest imagination, and there's almost no place for it to go, because it's gone to where it's okay, so it's bothering the person, but the more dramatic they become, the more they sit and mull over their amateur dramatics, because it's a lonely place without an audience. So it's all very well, all this socialising, what people do, but what are they socialising? What are they doing when they're socialising? They're going to make something very, very big because they believe it to be big. And if everyone believes it to be big, then everyone that doesn't believe it to be so big will start to believe that it's so big. And then they've got to come back to their homes where they're tied down, state of mind, tied down in bondage with the people that I'm having conflict with, state of mind, and I've got to go back to that now, because it's not actually, they have the worst pictures hanging up in their gallery of all the people they're having conflict with in their mind gallery, rather than the people that are nice and pleasant and enjoy. People that people have conflict with stay in people's minds more than nice people.
So how long we have to be audience of this kind of people? And that's another next
That's a good, yeah. There's a way of telling them in a less dramatic moment, and you'd say something like, when it's nothing much going on, I hope you don't mind me saying so, but you can tell me without getting too dramatic. You can tell me. I will listen. You don't need to be dramatic like that. And they'd probably be thinking, oh, they're going to listen. So you said a nice thing to them, and that's what they'll home in on, and then they'll leave. Leave you and divorce you. No, but if you say something nice in a nice way, that I will still listen to you. You don't need to, change dramas into crisis. We know it's a crisis. We know it's a problem. We know it's a situation that we mustn't make bigger than us. And that's something that, water runs towards a slope. You can actually say to them without saying directly. So you've done an indirect way of telling them that, yeah, I'm making something bigger than me, therefore I'm being smaller than it. And that's why they're dramatic in the first place, is because they felt small to the situation. Maybe they felt small to the bully. The bully was feeling small, so he had to bully. And now the person that's getting bullied is either going to be a bully or he's going to be very dramatic to get his self-esteem back. And thankfully, when we're the masters of everything and nothing's bigger than us, that's where we get our self-worth from, isn't it? So the cave walls start to move away the less I make of it, because I've only got to unmake it. You know, people say a trouble shared is a trouble aired is a trouble shared, and that's half the burden, but it's not. It's just the pressure cooker not bursting in the seams that they're building up in their mind, because they still believe they're smaller than the problem. So that's why they need to share it in the first place. If they didn't need to share, it'd be the proof, the living proof, that they're accommodating it and making themselves feel bigger and better than the situation. In that way, they can not overthink everything.
I mean, at this moment in time, with the word resources becoming so scarce and the population increasing, a lot of people would argue that I'm not going to accommodate and I need it for myself. What would you say to them?
Well, you mean the people that are buying 24 toilet rolls or packs of cases of toilet rolls and things like that? When people do that, what happens is karmically they're making it happen that one day those resources won't be there for them. Because at the moment those resources are there for them and they've not considered anyone else, so they're taking. And as they take, the more they take, the more their hands are closed. So it's a bit like the Buddha and the monkey, isn't it? The monkey's trying to get the apple out of the jar, and the Buddha opens the monkey's hand and he turns the jug upside down and the apple falls into his hand, but we're like that, he can't get the apple out of the jug. And it's exactly the same with human beings. They're actually setting themselves up for a situation whereby they won't get the resources because they're getters, they're takers. And as long as you're a giver, these things will keep coming because your hands are open. If your hands are closed, they'll run away. Those things. They're just taking the last remnants off their tree of fruits unless they learn this lesson, because giving is receiving. So if there's a shortage of water and people come for my water and they take the water, then more water will come along. If I'm a taker and a getter and people take my water and I struggle to hold on to it, there's a chance that I won't have water.
Most of the pictures of the Indian goddesses and gods have like the hand is open.
Yeah,
never closed.
That's telling the whole story, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't want anything, but I'm giving everything. Like that. Beautiful. Says everything. So what man does, he does it completely the opposite way of being creative, creating space between himself and the situations and so-called problems, but problem is a state of mind. It's only a situation that needs to be dealt with, isn't it? The problem is because the person's not accommodating the situation, so their feelings are getting wrapped in the situation and they use the word problem. But in actual fact, through God's eyes, they are just situations. So there's no such thing as a problem unless my feelings colour the situation into the feeling of a problem. And you'll see that people actually create problems when there are no problems, because their feelings are always colouring in the bits that are missing that they don't know about, and it's always the worst scenario, the worst outcome. And they'll say things like, well, you've got to be prepared for the worst outcome, but what are you being prepared with? You know.
That's true.
Yeah, what you're going to take into to handle the situation, to manage the situation. Anger, fear,
That just weakens the soul,
reactivity.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and every situation becomes a problem because of a lack of spirituality and accommodation and creating space between yourself and the situation, and creating space in the situation as well for others that are in that situation. Because if I've got space, I'm creating space in them as well. So I'm doing something for my family.
So, like you said earlier, if we have found faith that every one of us or every soul on this earth will have the best end.
They'll have a happy ending, yes. Every soul does, because because every soul remembers God when they've got sorrow. So everyone remembers God making it a happy ending for them. But every soul, even atheists, when the chips are down, they remember God. But it's only when there's intense sorrow, because He made their ending a happy one.
But the faith is that God has come and God will keep His promise. He has promised to all the souls, isn't it, that I will make you happy.
In what was
God
that?
will make everyone happy, isn't it? That's His promise.
I don't know, where did He promise that? Or you mean...
That's a faith in the soul, isn't
Oh, I
it?
see.
That God will make.
Right, I'm with you. I'm with you.
God will make
Our own
every soul-
inbuilt scripture.
Yes.
Yes, of course.
God
Yeah,
will
got you.
make everyone happy. If we just have that
Yes.
faith, then power to accommodate will be easy to use, isn't it?
Yes. It's a good subject, isn't it? Creating space, creating vastness between situations and not allowing the feelings to cling to the situation. And then you start to feel like, because you've made that amount of space available, the meditation with God improves immensely. Because the only reason why people can't have good meditation and feel lots of love from God is because there's no space. They've actually chased all the space out. They've built inside their own mind. Never mind about the buildings that are going up all the time in the outside world. The inside world is actually, people are waking up in the morning in fear in anxiety of their day. Because they don't know what's going to happen, and they've got to go to work, and they've got, do I wear a mask, do I wear gloves, what if someone, all that stuff.
You often see that yogis that are, very spiritual, they automatically, they don't even know that they're how accommodating they are. They don't give it a second thought.
They exude it, that's the word,
yes,
isn't it?
exactly,
They exude that.
Yeah, it just seems to happen as, that's the way they carry themselves. They're very accommodating.
Well, the belief system in India especially was always that you can't do it in this world. You've got to be away from this world, and that's been proved to not be true, because there's plenty of good yogis that are doing it in this world. Now they wake up with space, they move around in space, they don't think too much to clutter up their space, they don't overthink, they're aware of when they're overthinking something, because that's where the imagination kicks in. And when the imagination gets hold, 95% of the imagination that people imagine doesn't happen. So they're still imagining the worst things that can happen. So in a sense, it's a death of 1,000 cuts every day, really, because they imagine the worst scenarios to happen. And when they don't happen, they don't question their imagination. They don't think, Boris, it was on the radio the other day, and they said that Boris is thinking of giving £500 to everyone. And the other presenter said, really, is he going to give us? But we said he's not sure, but it was just something I heard from someone else. And it's like the way their eyes light up, because they're looking for an exit, a door that will lead to some kind of fortune, and they're their own fortune writer. So another person would say, it doesn't matter whether there's £500 there or not, it's my worry that's costing me the most. It's costing me my life, my worry. And that's why we say worry yourself sick or worry yourself to death, because worry is the price of life. And
if you give that space in your mind, then you accommodate yourself.
Yes.
Then you accommodate the situation that's coming as well, because that might not behave so, or come so badly. It might.
It may not, and and bad is a state of mind.
It is
as well. If it's really bad, or is it just bad, or really, 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 really bad. It all depends on the emotions, how bad it is. But if the emotions aren't there, then nothing is bad, and also nothing is good, because you're good. And if you're good, then everything that happens to you is good. But if it's good or it's bad, then everything that happens to you is a state of worry. Because you're good, you don't want things to be bad. But we think it's the things that have to be good, and they mustn't get bad. But who is it who's thinking that they should be good? It's the good. So it's the good in itself that is actually trying to make everything good, but the good doesn't know it's good, because it thinks the situation's got to be good to feel good.
I think it's another belief as well, that if you don't worry, you're not normal.
Yeah, completely mad, abnormal. Yeah, you should worry.
And I think that's why we even create worry, where there is no
The
worry.
cremation grounds are filled with them. You should worry like them.
Yeah, exactly. You should have stress. And this is special in the businesses, that if you don't have stress, you can't be a businesswoman or businessman.
Right.
You have to carry stress, and you have to learn how to deal with stressful situations, isn't it?
Yeah, to me they're not carrying it though. They're not handling it. Carrying stress is is quite easy. Like the angels that see the stress in the man's sack, or the man's worries in his sack, and the two angels, and they said, "What's in your sack?" And he said, "It's my worries." And they looked in the sack and there was nothing there. And they said, "There's nothing in there." And he stood up straight and he went, "Oh, that feels better."
Well, I like you say worry is the price for life.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Normally we say our life is priceless, but it's not priceless, is it?
Well, your body feels your worry first, doesn't it? I mean, you might not tell anyone about your worries. They might not even see a worried face. But your body, we tell our bodies first. So we tell all our organs of our bodies that I'm worried, that I'm frightened, that I'm stressful, because they feel it directly as the mind feels it. It's mind over matter. But that's the whole problem. Mind is affecting matter like that. So mind over matter should really be, I don't mind and it doesn't matter. It should be really that I've got to consider my body. And I remember Daddy Janky would always say, I spend 5 minutes giving peace to my body every morning, and she lived till 104 without any worry. So, if a soul's going to elongate their life, because yoga's famous for making the life longer, the worry should become less the more I create space, because yoga is all about creating space, and love creates the most space. Fear creates the least. So, because I'm inviting it, wherever I fear, I attract. So I'm attracting it to happen. That's why in panic, toilet rolls, one day you'll have no toilet rolls. Anyway, shall we do a meditation to finish? Because we're getting on for the hour now. Oh, yeah. I bring the mind to a full stop and practice not thinking, but going into silence. In my mind's eye, I can see a silent place which is so very far away, but also so close to my own heart. It's a feeling inside of me that has a homely feeling that is so serene and so peaceful that within a second I can think of that space and that place and move away from the world of matter, far, far away within a second to a silent place of light, huge, vast space that fills my mind with energy, with lightness, with power. And I hold that thought of this silent place of power that is filling me, holding my attention and making me bigger and more powerful and better than anything that I have to face in my material, mundane life. I am the important one, playing an ordinary role, but making the role a special role, because I am special. So I bring my space from the home of silence into my role, and everything before me in my past, present and future seems all of a sudden so easy. I am like the ocean, a child of the ocean of love, the ocean of peace, and I will deal with my role like the ocean. Om Shanti.